Hi, and welcome back to Plastic Models by Regular Dude, in part 4 of the Tamiya 1/35 scale German 3.5 ton truck AHN with 3.7 centimeter Flak 37 anti-aircraft gun. Last time, in part 3, we got parts, or steps 5 through 12 completed, with the exception of the tires. Those will be put on probably one of the very last things I do. So here is the frame. As you can see, I've got the hubs in place, or the rims, I should say, and the engine, everything painted, ready to go. So with that being completed, we are ready to move on to step 13, which begins the cab. So without further ado, let's start cutting these parts off, getting them ready to go. Alright, so these go inside there. Now, these are numbered differently, but they look exactly the same, so I don't know. Why they would do it like that, but so glue that one there. That one, whoops. That one there. Let those dry. Let's zoom in. I forgot to do that so you can see what's going on. We got the steering wheel here. Make sure sprue gates are all smoothed out. And then the steering column here. All right, and these glue on right here like this. There is that little pin there. Well, it's kind of an angled deal. Fits right there, and then that pin fits in that hole right there. So, whoops. Sure, it's in place there. And the old Tamiya extra thin all the way around. Same on this side here. Like thusly. All right, so that takes care of step 13. All right, step 14, we've got some interior stuff going on. So we've got some, we got A26, two A97s, A25, A96. That's all the foot pedals, and then some other parts. All right, so we've got A26, and that fits from behind like that. Like that. And then this one here fits from the front. it fits with this circular opening facing up. And then we've got these, the brake and the clutch. Boy, those are tiny. So what I'm going to do, use my thicker cement for that, and I'm going to apply it with this specialized thick glue. Whoa, a little too much in there. Thick cement applicator. Kind of hard to find, but I'm sure it's not too hard to locate one. Okay. So I don't know how the driver's feet are gonna fit in this thing, but it could be interesting to see how these things, fare. All right, you know what? I'm gonna let those dry before I monkey around with anything else. Those things are barely on there. Okay, I got the accelerator pedal glued on. I got the oh no, I'm getting ready to die handle glued on, and the dashboard. This is also supposed to go on in this step. However, I'm not going to do that because I want to paint this first, get the decal on here, then I can put the steering wheel in place. So I'm going to prime and paint this thing. All right, I think before I paint, before I prime and paint this, I'm going to put together the side parts, the sides and the front of the cab, including the glass. So I can paint that stuff as well. So when I put the glass in, obviously I'm going to mask it off. So actually I'm not going to put the glass in yet. I have another plan. But anyway, I am going to get this stuff, everything that I can assembled on these parts, so I can prime and paint all of the interior at the same time, which means I'm also going to have to do the the rear bulkhead here. So yep, that's what I'm gonna do. All right, here we go. First, swinging up into the truck or out of the truck handle. Which fits really well. Again, so far so good on the old ICM kit. So now we got the window crank. It goes there. Like that. And then we have the let me out handle. So now I got to do the other side. We'll be good with that. Okay, now I can glue the windows in, and as you can see here, I've got this one and this one in place, and they fit really, really well. So I'm pretty stoked. Now they are sided. You have to make sure you get the right ones per side, but there's what would you call it? It's grooved all the way around. So, but they just drop right into place. So I'm going to use, carefully, Tamiya extra thin. Oh yeah, that is spectacular. See, a lot of people use you know, some of the clear PVA type glues, and I do too, but sometimes it's kind of nice to be able to use just regular cement. Okay, so there you go. That's what it looks like. So I'm going to do the rest of them, including the front, set them aside to dry really well, and then I can move on to the next part. Okay, so all the windows are in. So now I can paint the details in here and apply the decal. Then I also need to paint this, which is I think the built-in teapot. No, I'm kidding. I don't know what that is. I bet you 40 bucks it's the air cleaner. I think I mentioned that earlier. I think it's the air cleaner. Anyway, I need to paint that. So I'm going to get out some paints, and I'm going to do the knobs on here, the decal, and that should be all I need to paint on that. Alright, next I need to put this decal on, and that is decal number 9. So I'm going to chop it off right there. Take my special decal tweezers, get that thing soaking, put these back in here. Back in the box, get this over here, let that soften up, and get my decal set here, mark fit, that's what I'm going to use this time, and yeah. Okay, the Durkle is now softened up. First, we'll put a little bit of this on here, and then put that right there like that. Let's see if I can get it centered up. There we go. And then some of this right there. Take one of these here. Decal application tool version 2. Oh my goodness. I lined that sucker up just right. I am stoked. You probably can't tell in the video, but the little dial there, or the little pointer, is right on the molded pointer. So I got that pretty stinking good. Let that dry. All right, so let's get these seat cushions glued on. and I use the AK third generation water-based acrylics to paint those seat cushions a somewhat leather color. And you may be asking, why isn't the back of the cushion painted? Well, because it was on the bit of sprue that I kept it on to paint it, and these weird seat backs are going to go on it. And I say weird because they just don't really fit like I figured they would, but hey, no, looky there. That one looks pretty good. So, and I don't know if I mentioned it, but the color I used was Panzer Gray for all this interior stuff. Alright, so there's one seat. Doesn't look very comfortable. But what do I know? Same thing on this one. Like that. All right, so that takes care of that. Now I need to paint this, so I'm going to prime it and paint it really quick. But this is supposed to be like a steel color, metallic. I've already got it cleaned up, so that is ready to paint. And so I'm going to glue these side panels on, and this is how they fit. This little angled protrusion here fits in this angle here. This fits here, and I'm sure that I need to make sure that it's pretty. And then this rests on that right there, so probably got to make sure that it's pretty lined up, because if not, it creates some difficulty. So let's get some extra thin here and apply it liberally all along here like that. And I'm going to do one side at a time and make sure it sets up really good, because I don't want to have any alignment issues. Seems to fit really good. So, and like I've said a couple of times in this build so far, the fit of this kit seems pretty good. I think I'm going to clamp this just to hold it in place. Doesn't take a lot of pressure, just enough to hold it snug. Same there, like that. All right, so I'm going to let that set up for a minute and then come back and do the other side. While that is drying up or curing up, the figures are coming up. So I'm not going to do these on this video. I'm going to do that as a separate video. So we're going to go from, at some point, we're going to go from assembling the cab to having the cab completed with the figures in place. So just as a forewarning, that's going to be a separate video by itself. And I don't know how in-depth it's going to be, because I'm not very good at painting figures, and it could be quite a harrowing experience on video, but I'm going to make an attempt. So we'll let that dry up, come back, put the other side on. And now the other side. Like thusly. Man, oh shnikes, look at that. So let's do some clampage action again. Maybe. There. And there. Whoops. Oh, swap. There we go. All right. Looking good. Okay, let that dry. All right, next up, I got to glue this front panel on. And I'm doing that with the aid of a clamp and some tape. So we'll see how this works. Some there. Some there. Some there. And then I'm going to squeeze this together with my phalange. Oh, geez. Oh, there it went. Dadgummit. Okay, let's see what happens here. The trick is not getting any under the tape. Some there. Some there. I'm going to let that dry for a second before I try and tape it, because I don't want that tape to... Okay, that should be good. And then reinforce it here. Like that.
That was it though. I didn't think it was.
All right, same thing on this side. And then I'm going to have some seams to fill here. But I expected that, because from what I can see on the illustrations and such, the edges are supposed to be smooth, so I'm going to have to do some filling. As much as I love filling, I'm going to get to do some. Just got to figure out what I'm going to use for said filling. Whoops. Oh, shnikes. Okay. So now let that dry. All right, so with these sides glued in place and the glue is cured up, I now need to fill the gap. So what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to use black super glue. And what black super glue is, if you don't know, it's super glue that is black. A little humor there, folks. It's actually got an additive, so it's kind of just slightly rubberized, I think. I don't know what the additive is, but I've discovered that it makes a good filler. Regular CA glue gets really, really hard. So if you use it for a filler, you have a small window in which to get it sanded and smoothed over. Otherwise, you risk not getting a smooth sand job because the plastic is softer than the super glue, and you can mess up the plastic surrounding the fill. So this stuff is a lot more forgiving, and it works really well. I've used it before, and it's pretty much become a go-to for filling stuff like this. Now, some of you might say, what about sprue goo? Sprue goo? What's sprue goo? Well, sprue goo is when you take some remaining liquid cement, like Tamiya extra thin, like if you got a little bit left in the bottom of the bottle, and you just start chucking a bunch of plastic shavings and bits and pieces in it and let it dissolve, thereby making a filler of sorts with super glue. And, or not super glue, with plastic and to me extra thin. So the thinking is like, wow, it's like you're making a filler that's made out of the same plastic as your model. Well, yes, you are. However, it behaves way differently. Now, it might be good for some things, but I've discovered in my use, I don't really care for it. I tried it for quite a while, and I just didn't care for it much. And I'm sure there's people out there who would say, well, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. Well, maybe so, but I've tried thinning it further. I've tried making it thicker. And the problem I end up with is no matter what you do, no matter how long you let it cure, it is not going to be as hard as the plastic around it. And sometimes it can stay kind of soft, and which is not necessarily a bad thing all the time. However, contrary to popular belief, it can sink in and still create ghost seam lines and stuff like that. So overall, don't really care for it because it does not harden like plastic. Others may say, why don't you use like Tamiya filler, Tamiya putty? Well, again, it's one of those things that, you know, used properly, it'll work. But you get the dreaded ghost seams, which means if you have a seam somewhere and you put some of that stuff in it, it'll be all nice and smooth, and then it can shrink as it further cures. And I think that's the biggest problem people have with it, because they'll put it on there, they'll sand it, and it's like, all right, cool, this looks awesome. Then they'll throw down with some paint, primer, paint, whatever, and then they notice they have just an ever so faint seam. And it's because some of those putties, like Tamiya, for instance, it's kind of a lacquer based type stuff, and it can take a while for it to gas off, as a phrase that's used at times, and that just means for it to 100% cure, and all of the lacquer thinner that they use for it totally evaporates and cures and sets hard. And while it does that, the material can shrink. So from what I've discovered in my usage, it's best to let that stuff sit for a long time before you sand it. And it can be kind of hard texture and stuff, but there's lots of different ways you can do stuff. It's just, this is the way I like to do this. And now that I've got it on here, I'm gonna have to let it cure for at least a day before I can start sanding it. So once that happens, I can glue the rest of this stuff in. So, as I mentioned earlier, whenever I do come back and start assembling this stuff, I will be putting the figures in, but I'm not going to do those in this video. That's going to be a completely separate video, and if I remember, I will put a link at the end of this video to the video of the figures, because I'll post that one first. All right, so I am going to go ahead and let that stuff dry up so I can sand it and we can start putting that stuff together. All right, so I got this stuff sanded down, so it should be good to go for the next step, and that is gluing the seats in and then the back and the top. I was going to do figures, but figures ain't happening this time for a number of reasons. Number one, I ain't feeling it. Number two, I don't have any flesh tone colors to use to paint the skin, and I don't want to wait for colors for paints to come in. And it just, I don't like doing figures. I try and I do okay once in a while, but I really have to be in the mood for figures, and this ain't one of those times. So for all of you people out there, sorry, don't be sad. You can call me a jerk in the comments, that's fine, but I ain't doing figures right now. Just not doing it. So let's continue on with gluing the seats in. After I get this blue tack off of here that is on there from when I was going to do the figures. There, good. All right, so I just need to glue these in. There's a square peg with a square hole for both sides. So let's see, let's try this cement right here. Like that. Oh. I'm gonna have to touch that seat up, the cushion. These look more like somewhat modern bar stools than truck seats. All right, so there's that. So now I can get the top and the back and get those ready for gluage. And for that window there, I used Mr. Masking Sol R. Mr. Driver Man is now in position, so I'm going to glue the back plate on first instead of the top. And the reason for that is I want to make sure everything lines up. I did some test fitting, and I think this is the way that'll work best. So got that there. Now I'll just take some extra thin and put it right there like that. And like that. A little bit here. And just make sure it's all pressed firmly into place. Now there's like little channels there for that to fit in. Maybe not channels, but like a groove. So I'm going to make sure that dries good. So I'm going to hold it. And with the roof fitted, I will okay, so I'm going to hold that tightly in place like that. Make sure it looks lined up, and I'm going to do the sides first. Again, there's like a okay, I'm going to hold that, make sure it sets up good. Then I'll do the front and the back. See, the top's a little bit bowed up, so I want to make sure these sides are well glued first. Okay, I'm going to let that sit up before I start squeezing around on the rest of it. Yeah, I'm going to do the front right now too because it's not cooperating. Make sure that back is lined up. I want to keep it as lined up as possible. Okay, I'm going to tape this because this is one to bow up. Okay, that all looks pretty good. So once that all sets up, then I'll do this back part here. All right, well, all that is setting up. I can glue this front grille and the headlights, which the headlights I'm not actually going to glue the lenses in yet, obviously, because that would not be a smart thing. So let's see, I need the grill and this decorative looking thing that goes on it. I don't know what that is. It just drops right into place. There's a pin, and it's kind of got some recessed action going on there. You can kind of see the shape of this part. Fits on there really nicely. So just run it along like that. Other side here. There and there. Like that. And that will finish up to step 19. Then we can move on to 20, which is attaching this and some of these accoutrements, but I'm going to wait until the calves dried really well. Next up are is a grab handle and is that a grab handle? Yeah, it must be. Grab handle and the door latch handles. So I need to cut those off, get them cleaned up and glued in place, and then I can glue the grill in place. So let's cut those off. There we go. All right, this should be entertaining, these parts. Now, I think that looks all right. I was afraid I was gonna have to cut the pins off, but they're okay, they're flush. But that's not gonna stand up very well, so do that. It's pressed down and perpendicular to the surface upon which it is attached. And then take this little teeny tiny handle here, and this one I do it like this. Looks good. So I'm going to touch a little bit of extra cement there just to make sure it welds really well, because I don't want that possibly coming off, which it probably will. So I'm not going to be able to lay this down for this one. So we'll get these glued on and then we'll move on to this part. Alright, so that's glued, and then this right here goes here. and it kind of drops down into position. And I'm going to glue this from behind. Like this. Like that. Okay, the next thing is the headlights. Now the headlights, let's see here. It looks like you can choose one or the other. There's one that's more flat on the back and one that's kind of rounded. Here and here. So I need to decide, well, and I think I'm going to go with these flatter ones just because this other has like a lot of flash and I really don't want to monkey around with that. So I'm going to cut those off and glue those on the front. I am not, as I said in the earlier segment, 84 is the right side, so I'm not going to glue the headlight lens in place. That will be like probably one of the last, if not the last thing I do, because I'll paint this with the rest of the vehicle and then I will paint the inside silver and then glue the lens in place. So let me get these cleaned up and glue them in place. Now the nice thing is they have like square pins, a square hole, so it's real easy to get it nice and flush. For this, I think I'm going to use my thicker cement. Now what I'm going to do is before I commit to gluing this cab, to the frame, I am going to check all my seams because I think I need to put a little more filler on that. This seam right here, I can feel it. I can feel the gap. So I'm gonna have to, I want to prime it so I can see exactly what's going on, and then I will it'll be ready for paint. Yeah, these headlights will be a lot more solid, a lot less easy to knock off too. Okay, so with that finishes up the cab, except for those few items I mentioned. I'm not going to put the windshield wipers on yet either. I'll do those last, and yeah, I'm not going to do the cable yet. That'll be another one of the last items. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Okay, so that will end part number 4 of the German 3.5 ton truck with 3.7 centimeter flat gun. If this is if you're just joining this series, then I will put a link at the end if you'd like to start from the beginning, see the introduction. Otherwise, tune in next time and we'll pick up part number, or step number 22, which is the bed underside frame, and we'll move on from there. So as always, thanks for watching Plastic Models by Regular Dude, and I will say adios.